Welcome back to another session of the 8th grade painting project. If you are keeping up with the instruction, what you see in front of you should look pretty familiar. If you've not been, you need to really probably go back and review the videos so that you can keep up with what we're doing in class right now. So in an effort to continue just to paint in larger areas first and get a greater sense of completion to all of this, I think today, and of course you're going to need your red, yellow, blue, black, and white paint, and you're going to probably need an index card on which to mix it. If we were in the physical classroom, that's what we would use. You may want to use something, for instance, such as a paper plate would be great for putting all your colors on and then mixing as well. I use that when I paint on my own, but for these demonstrations I'm using the materials that we would use in the regular classroom. Now, we're going to mix up some colors again. I recommend against you placing the paint on top of your painting. However, for this demonstration, I want you to be able to see clearly what I am doing. And so, we're going to start out by mixing up some green. A nice dark green, and we're going to paint our chair, this rail, all of these parts in this rail here, green. So we're going to try to make it slightly darker than the green that's on our pear. So let's take, starting out with 4 dips of the yellow, as I've told you many times before. The yellow is really not a very powerful color, and it has got to be overused in order to get some of the colors that we are attempting to create. So in this case, we're going to use 4 yellows. Now, we're going to try to get a nice permanent green, so kind of a darkish green. So we're probably going to need 2 blues in this case. Now, you should go from the very edge of the puddle of the blue, since we are attempting to preserve those primary colors. The next class will be using them, and so don't get your classmates in the next class all angry at you by sliming up the colors. In fact, it's probably a good idea simply just to clean out your paintbrush between each color. Okay, now what we've got here going, we've got to scrape this into a tight little pile, like it was a pile of sand, not smearing it all over the place. You will get the right color eventually that way, but it will dry out right on the mixing surface before you have a chance to put it on your painting many times. Or you will find out that you use it all up and most of it's dried and you still need more of that color. So this technique that I'm showing you of simply scraping everything together into a tight little pile like it was sand, and your paintbrush is a tiny little broom, is a very good way to keep your paint from drying out too quickly, especially that little glob in the middle right there that you are really trying to use. Okay, so my paintbrush is loaded with a lot of paint, but I'm going to go ahead and start to paint with it, and you just have to exercise a great deal of caution if you're trying to paint with a brush that's got a large charge of paint in it. It doesn't work quite as well as you would think. I am doing this based on experience though, and also I think that it's going to be possible to use all the paint this way. I hate to just leave the paint in the rinse water or to leave it on a paper towel somewhere. Okay, so but you may, in the interest of having more precise painting marks, you may need to rinse out your brush and dry it, and then only use the finest tip of the brush to get good results. And that's what I'm going to do here in just a moment, simply because my paintbrush, the end of it is all clogged with paint. So, it's good advice, folks. So here we go. Let's rinse this nasty brush out. And that green's a little bit transparent. It looks like it's got red in the middle of it on the projection screen. I'm not sure what's up with that, unless it's just the red reflecting from nearby it. Okay, let's try this again with a little bit more control. Now see that it's the yellow is very, very transparent, and so we're getting kind of a color known as sap green, which is a very useful color when you are painting with oil paints, by the way. Now, this heavy-bodied acrylic paint will leave little grooves behind, and you can actually use those grooves to help indicate that this object is curved. So those grooves are called plastic control lines. So see, we want that to appear as though it's curvy. Now just do the same thing again down here. I'll just, sometimes you gotta use a little bit of a larger bead of paint. And this surface will also be green, but since it's basically a cylinder with a rounded end on it, we want those to touch each other so they look structurally accurate. What you're trying to avoid is something called logic problems if you can. Logic problems are where things just don't make sense. And instead of looking at your painting, people will look at those logic problems and say, well, this shouldn't be here, this doesn't make sense. So a lot of times you have to adjust a painting just so that people don't pick on it simply because they don't know what they're looking at. So you have to help people out when you're making paintings many times. Less sophisticated audience is not going to understand if things don't. They'll say, well, that chair doesn't look like it's in the right place. Well, okay, right. Maybe you're right. But that's they should be looking at things like how inventive the work is and how crafty it was that you put, certain colors together. Now, on this, we can make our little plastic control lines, if you can see these in here, go sidewards in little smiley faces. And that will make that cylindrical effect on that portion of the chair. So let's continue on by doing this in the other portion of the chair. So we are only on, I believe, like the 6th session of this painting, and we are already making really good progress toward completion before the end of the 9-week period. So this means we must be near the end of the quarter if we're painting, and if we're this far into the painting, we must be very near the end of the quarter, which means that there will be a quiz coming up before long on painting. So the time to check your notes would not be 10 seconds before the quiz. Especially the videos of those notes will be blocked before and during quizzes, so you won't have access to them. So my advice is, if you didn't take down the notes, or you didn't take them down very well, or if you missed some school during the time we were taking down the notes, is to review those videos, copy those notes down, and then use them as a resource on your quiz. And then, of course, we'll be grading paintings, and we'll be grading notes, and we'll be grading work habits as well when all this happens. Okay, so it looks like that is a little bit more transparent than the other side, so I guess I'm going to have to use a little bit more paint. Sometimes you just got to use more paint. Okay, now the little groove marks, like we did over here, should also appear in here, and so we want to kind of make these, we want to compare these two objects, these elliptical objects, and make sure that they at least look similar to each other on both sides of our chair there. Okay, so we want to kind of follow the contours of the curvation of the chair, or these egg-like objects on the top of it there, the finials. And then we'll just continue on with the green. So we're simply just blocking in the colors that we're going to apply more colors over top of in subsequent sessions. that's how it's done. Paintings are built up in layers. Now, a lot of times that's not evident to people who don't know much about painting. They think that the paintings are all done very quickly, and some can be done quickly. But most paintings require a great deal of planning and thought, sketching out first, experimentation with the colors and the materials that you're using, the surfaces that you're painting on, the paint you're going to attempt to use when you make that painting, whether you're going to be painting on a vertical surface, such as an easel, or whether you're going to be painting on a tabletop, such as I am right now, and you probably are as well. So all of these considerations need to be worked out in advance, and so that's why, even though somebody may look like they're making a painting quickly, many times a preparatory sketch has already been done on it, and there are notes nearby that simply you can't see or don't know about, because all this is off camera. Okay, so now I'm going to make my little smiley face curve marks in there, kind of indicating that what I'm looking at is a cylinder of some sort. Now we'll just continue this in this top rail of our sap green chair. We're going to leave just a micro space between these two surfaces to distinguish them from each other. And since this curves away from us in kind of a sad face shape, that's how we're going to try to leave the marks, the paintbrush marks behind. We want them to also have that effect, that they curve away from us. And it will disappear up here behind our cake stand, or cheese stand, or whatever stand your stand is. Very good. Here we're just going to keep applying the paint and that kind of sad face, gentle curve. And just accurately placing small amounts of paint with the finest point of the brush. Control. Once you learn control, then you can start kind of smearing paint around expressively, and you might come across something. If you start that way by making paintings, the likelihood you'll ever gain control is low. So from an academic or a teaching standpoint, it is my belief and experience that you start with control, and then you broaden your ability levels by experimentation and planning. But controlling paint so that it does as you want it to do, rather than however it just does it, is an acquired skill that can take many years of experience to, gain mastery of. Okay, so now we want these two surfaces over here to look similar to each other. Alright, that's doing fine. Now, continuing on with the sap green color that we have created, following closely, comparing to the other side. And we're again going to leave just that tiniest space in between these two items here that are the same color. And we may have to very carefully place an outline around that at some point in the future. Okay, now I need to be painting on the other side of my paintbrush so I can get control of this, because I cannot accurately see what I'm doing when I have the brush obscuring my vision. So I should be able to see the moment that paintbrush touches that surface and the mark is made, I should see that visual feedback immediately. And some folks, when they paint, they lift up their paintbrush, and what they see is shocking to them, because they did not even know the mark that they were making. So painting is the skill where you have to be able to see what the brush is doing. Much in the same way that handwriting is a skill, that if you can't see what your pencil is doing at the moment you make the character or the letter, you will never develop good handwriting. So you need to have that moment of what we call instant visual feedback. You make the mark and you actually see it. You know when you make the mark if it's the right mark or not. Not after you lift up your paintbrush and it's a complete mystery to you how it got there. Okay, now, so this has been really a successful drawing and painting exercise here. Everything that we learned in the drawing unit, we pretty much brought into this unit on painting as well. And so it all kind of worked its way together by the end of the 9-week grading period if done properly. You start with basic foundation skills, then you move on to more complicated skills that require more maturity, greater understanding, more complex application projects. So it's learning is a long road, and learning to do something like a craft or an art is a very long road. Okay, let's see what we got there. Let's compare it. Looks symmetrical to me. It's got that kind of grainy effect, almost like it was painted on rough wood. That part right there is giving me some fits. I'm going to bend that line down a little more and then compare it. Still needs to be bent down some more, it looks like to me. So, but I've got more paint. That's okay. Ooh, now it's bending. Hope I didn't go too far. Alright. Let's see what we got there. I think that will be fine. And now we're going to skip a stripe and go down to the next one. This is the next back rail that you would lean back against in this chair if you were sitting at this table. Alright, so we want to just carefully see at the end of the brush and that tiny glob of paint called the bead of paint. Try to steer it around. And then when we start noticing that we have to push down on the brush to get paint to come off of it, that's the moment. That moment, not like 5 minutes later. That's the moment you absolutely must reload that brush. Okay, so the lower railing here, the back railing is looking pretty good. It's got that wood grain effect going on it. And it also gives us that kind of curving away from us effect. Those plastic control marks in there. So I'm going to play that up a little bit more. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And so it can take a while just to paint. You know, these paintings are kind of complicated. And it can take us a while to do these paintings. And just one portion of it, if done properly, could take an entire class period. And I've got to admit, if it's taking me that long to paint it, it's probably going to take a student that long to paint it with any level of quality work. Okay. Here we go. So we've got all this green paint. We may have to go back and try to figure out something to do with that green paint. Alright, now let's make sure we got that kind of curved. It should
go from one side to the other in one even curve. If we could see through it, we would notice it would pass through evenly. Okay, same thing over here. These curves should match each other, should be tucked up right against that vertical part of that cheese pan. So let's see what we got. That looks pretty good. I think I want to leave that alone. That almost looks like an actual chair. I don't know where that, somewhere in here is. That's a reflection, actually. That's been painted in, but it's reflecting off the wet paint. So it's not a blank spot, but that's what it looked like. Okay, so that's going to be fantastic. Alright, let's move that green off of there and contemplate something else for a while here. It might be about time to start considering some colors for our bowl down here. And since I look at what we've got here and we're missing, up here we've got some straight up blue, but we're missing blue down here. So I'd like to make that bowl a bluish color, but I want it to be a bit of a bluish gray. So let's rinse out our paintbrush and thoroughly clean it. Alright, now then we're going to on our mix card, and I would, like I said, I recommend against putting your any of this on your actual painting here like I am doing, but I do have reasons for that, instructional reasons. So we want this to be kind of a powder blue, or a like a ceramic bowl blue. So we want to start with maybe just some baby blue, and then put a little bit of maybe a dot of black into it to make it kind of a slate color. So let's go with, if we pick up, let's go with, because we will need quite a bit of this color, let's go with 3 blues. And then rinse out and clean your brush so you don't pollute the paint for the next student that has to use it in the next class. Okay, make sure your brush is dry. A soggy brush gives you very transparent paint. We're going to take 1 large scoop of the white, and that's a good large scoop right there, okay? We're going to mix all that together, and we should get some sort of a very light blue color. So let's carefully scrape all the strands of it together. We want to use our paintbrush like it's a tiny broom, and like we're sweeping up a tiny pile of sand with it. Alright, we want all of the strands of the white and the blue to be mixed together. So, you know what? That color looks pretty good. I just have to go with that almost immediately. Now try to get all of the paint off of that paintbrush. You may need it all, or we may use it again later. And get all the strands out. When you're done with that, you absolutely must clean out your brush and dry it. We are going to be doing some very tricky work in between the grapes on the front, and we are going to need control. So that brush needs to be dry so it will not give you transparent runny paint. Okay, you want to pick up some of this blue. We are not going to paint the foot, only the front surface of the bowl right now. And then we will shade this blue for its use later here, the surfaces inside the bowl. And it's important that you got to have some courage and paint it right up next to the grapes. But if you're using just the point of the brush and just a small bead of paint, then that should not be a big task. Now in this case, the bowl is also curved. So we want, if the brush leaves little curved marks or grooves behind, we want them to follow the contour of the bowl. Those lines, although you may not be able to see them on the projection screen, but I think they are visible to you, those lines, or those grooves that your paintbrush leaves behind, are very powerful in indicating motion and shape to your viewers. So if your bowl doesn't really appear to be perfectly drawn or painted round, the method in which you apply the paint, those marks, those paintbrush marks, plastic control lines, has a huge impact on the visual understanding of the subject matter. So when people see it, they'll say, oh, that's a curved surface, that's a bowl, even if it's not accurately painted or drawn. So in drawing, we would use hatch marks, if you recall our lecture from drawing. Straight hatching, cross hatching, curved hatching, stimpling. These are all markings that help to maneuver the eye of the viewer through your painting. And you'll probably notice I've been very careful to paint each individual part of the painting in carefully. Not just try to paint everything over here on the chair all at one time. That just leads to just ridiculously poor results. So you do have to just be patient more than anything and do good work slowly instead of fast work recklessly. Okay, so my goal is to finish enough each day so that I can finish the painting by the due date of the project. And that will almost always be 10 or 11 days from the moment we start the project. So from the time we get in this case, the painting board out and we start the preparatory sketch until the time we are finished with it, that is usually 10 or 11 days. So if you were going to look at your calendar and try to plan when should I have this project done, well, on the day that we start it, count off 11 class days and mark that on your calendar, and that's probably going to be a pretty good estimate. And if you get it all done in 10 or 11 days, then you'll certainly be ahead of the rest of the class. But if you simply keep up with the instruction as it's shown to you each day in these videos, you will certainly be able to finish the project in the allotted amount of time. If you're working along with me, you can't help but keep up. Okay, ooh, that grape just got kind of formed out. Okay. So, you know, a lot of people find painting to be a very relaxing activity. Some people find it to be stressful. And I guess it depends on what the circumstances are. If it's you know, if you've got a deadline to meet and you're not on the verge of meeting it, I guess I can see why people would be stressed out about that. Alright, so I'm carefully trimming around the grapes. Tucking the paint up carefully right next to the images, and that really makes them pop out against the background. If you can see along the right lower edge of the grapes down in here now, how those are really popping out really brightly against that background, or strongly against that background. That's what we're attempting to achieve here. It gives it that very three-dimensional effect when you do that. And you know, we're not really trying to duplicate precisely reality, but we are trying to make it believable at this particular level, for sure. Okay, so we'll just keep on adding the paint with the little groove marks it leaves behind, looking very attractive, curving along with the contour of the bowl. So in a lot of cases it's simply like drawing, but you're using paint. And you know, drawing typically doesn't have the same type of textural qualities that paint has got for you. When the paint dries, these little grooves will remain. But a drawing is kind of hard to get that effect, and then get full saturated colors. So this has been a fantastic project, though, and this whole experience of making the videos has taught me a great deal about instruction. So if you're paying attention to what I say in these videos as well as watching what I do, you probably learned quite a bit about some things this quarter since we began, which it seemed like a million years ago we started the design unit, but it's only been a few weeks back now. So I'm going to really very much try to make this edge really sharp and distinct against that gray background. Alright, and it does show up distinct. Now we will eventually, of course, we'll put shadowing and little markings into all of these portions of this painting in order to really enhance the three-dimensional aspect of it, okay? But right now we just want that nice, smooth, sharp edge showing against that gray background. So you gotta just hold your breath and move the paint and be brave sometimes. Alright, now that's looking pretty good right there. I think I'm going to go ahead and take some of this blue paint, and I'm going to add a little bit of black to it in just one particular surface of it, so that I can get a darker, like a shadowed effect. So if I pick up just a little bit of black, and I'm only going to use it in one area, so I get a really dark blue. That darkish blue right there is what I'm looking for. I clean off my brush because there's still some paint residue left in there. That really dark charcoaly gray is what I'm going to use to trim in a couple of areas back in here. And one of them, I gotta make sure I don't put my hand in the paint, is going to be right here. Now I have to make this distinctly darker than the gray that's on the fabric behind it, otherwise this will not show up. And I'm going to attempt to leave a tiny micro space, it's known as a halo, around the areas I'm painting here. But I do want a sharp line against the gray in the background. Around the grapes, I want to put a tiny halo. Okay, I'm going to use that same color over in here as well, since I've already got it kind of mixed up there. So, making sure I don't put my hand in any wet paint, placing it right here on the inside of the bowl. And we want that to also show up really strongly against that lighter gray background. Alright, and then I can just kind of tuck that in there accurately next to the pear and make it disappear down into the bottom of the bowl. Okay, very good, and we'll do the now see, this is making it's got some logical disconnection problems. So this has to be raised just a bit in order to logically connect with the other side of the bowl. So sometimes you have to adjust your ellipses as you paint them in, because somewhere along the line that elliptical surface got distorted somehow. And when you're making paintings, stuff like this happens. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're going to take that gray, that charcoaly gray again, and we're going to, it's not even charcoal, it's bluish gray, it's a slate gray, I guess is what we would call it technically. We're going to put that slate gray into this area right in here. And we want it to be tucked up right against the banana, and also the back edge of the painting. The surface behind the banana, the fabric. Alright, so yeah, this is only I think we've only been maybe 6 parts to our painting here. I get a little confused from time to time since I'm teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classes here and making videos for each one of those classes. So sometimes I do get a little perplexed by how far we've gotten in each grade level. Okay, so progress is, oh man, I wasn't expecting that. I'm sitting right next to the bell there too. Okay, so that means I just gotta finish this part up and we're probably done for the day here, this session. But we've got through the chair and the bowl and the inside of the bowl. So when we return in the next session, we'll do the outside of we'll do the foot of the bowl, and we'll move on to another portion of this painting. And you know, as the time goes by, and it does go by, we will probably notice that we have finished our painting before long. I'm going to have to finish this portion right here because it's driving me crazy. Here we go. Struggling here, but not too much. Let's take a look at what we've made here today, and we will pick up where we left off in our next session there. So I'm going to take a moment to tuck these colors together there very carefully. Alright, that looks pretty good, ladies and gentlemen. I declare it a good session. And that does look pretty good, and so that is, let's see what else we got up here, because sometimes it doesn't seem like we make much progress, but when you look at what has happened, you say, wow, we did make progress. So, we are making progress. We got our chair done today, and furthermore, we mixed up a few colors to work on our bowl, and we will just keep on painting. It won't be long. We'll have a painting finished. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have a good day, and I will talk with you in the next session. Goodbye.